The war in Gaza escalates as Israel and Hamas approach 2 weeks of fighting.
Retired Air Force Major Glenn Ignacio joins us live now with insight on what's happening. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us once again.
Good morning. Thank you.
Let's start with the hospital attack that happened yesterday. There was information out there that it was a bombing. There was a missile misfired. What do we know about what actually happened?
So there's actually a couple of different intelligence points that are important that came in. So first of all, Israel did record actual transmissions between Hamas leaders that there was a failure in one of the rockets, and that was published. But to be more of a third party as best as it can is the United States, as far as our intelligence resources with the carrier group and various assets all the way up to space-based, we're able to detect that the launch was a failure from a Hamas rocket. So that is pretty much the most solid intelligence we have to say that it was not Israel and it was Hamas failure for attacking with a rocket.
We have heard over the past few hours, Glenn, that there are a lot of concern from people that this will spread throughout the region. Hezbollah recently also threatened Israel. So can you take us in and see the realness of this conflict?
Absolutely. So with everything that's going on in Gaza, what's happening is to the north. So the north of Israel, right on the border of Lebanon, Hezbollah, it has about 100,000 militants plus of basically a terrorist force that is completely backed, supported, and directed as a proxy from Iran. So if Israel goes into Gaza and they actually invade and get bogged down, Hezbollah has an opportunity to attack Israel. Both Hezbollah and Hamas just do not want the state of Israel. They don't want it to exist. So if the invasion into Gaza, when that occurs, if that bogs Israel down, or if it's so traumatic that Hezbollah feels like they need to attack Israel, they will. So the possibility of escalation is either one, Hezbollah attacks Israel because of the movements into Gaza. Secondly, if Israel does a preemptive attack against Hezbollah, thinking that they're going to invade. Or third, Iran feels like they need to support Hezbollah and Hamas unilaterally and send missiles directly from Syria and Iran into Israel. So those are the three stages that could actually blow this up significantly.
The likelihood of that happening?
The probability of Hezbollah doing something against Israel is pretty high, because ever since it was probably the second or third day after the incident of the Hamas invading and attacking Israel, Hezbollah did launch rockets, and there's daily skirmishes back and forth. There's been a few Hezbollah and a few IDF soldiers killed as well. So the idea of Hezbollah coming to the aid of Hamas is highly probable, but again, they're also a little nervous about this, because that's why the U.S. presence there with our carrier group, because we are able to defend Israel because we have U.S. citizens in there based on our Constitution. And if Hezbollah does attack Israel, we will definitely be there to defend them.
And I want to get to more on that, but I do have a question specifically about when President Biden, he was just in Israel yesterday, he addressed the press, in which he promised $100 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza and in West Bank there. How does that work if Hamas is in control of the government and he wants to give aid, which is understandable, but how does it actually get to the civilians who actually need it and not into the wrong hands?
Great question. In fact, right now, there's no way for humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. So you're right. There's $100 million that's being dedicated for humanitarian aid. But here's the issue: is that the gates going from Egypt into Gaza directly in the south are closed down. And the reason why they're closed down is because both, you've heard the King of Jordan say yesterday, but also Egypt is afraid of a couple of things. First, all Palestinians rolling into that area, causing a humanitarian and just a refugee issue. But at the same time, that would leave a vacuum, because there's also a concern that Israel would completely occupy Gaza. So the Arab nations are not for that as well. So the gates have stayed closed, and they're just trying to get humanitarian assistance in. So you're absolutely right, is that $100 million going for aid to help these people, but at the same time, there's no way to get that in. So maybe if they're going to look at other options to get equipment and supplies into and medical supplies in to help the Palestinians. But you're right, Hamas could take those same supplies and use it for themselves.
There were minor injuries in a drone attack on a U.S. base in Iraq yesterday. I think there were some unconfirmed reports.
Actually, there's a U.S. defense official now telling Fox News that there was a drone attack on a U.S. military base in Syria just this morning.
Okay, so that's been confirmed since we walked in here earlier this morning. As the news of this continues to unfold, could we see more American troops being targeted now overseas?
Yeah, there's definitely an escalation from riots and protests around the world. Like I said, it's almost like trial by social media, where the first person that said something was Hamas saying it's Israel that attacked that hospital. So the entire world erupted that we're pro-Palestinians and anti-Israel. That's already occurred. But the rhetoric against the United States as far as supporting Israel has also increased. So you see the attacks there. There's also been major riots outside of the air base in Incirlik, Turkey, and there's a significant protest and violence happening around the world across embassies of the United States and so forth. So there is an escalation of anti-Israeli Semitism and also against the United States for being a support of Israel. So we do have to watch that particular effort. And a lot of this stuff for attacks in Iraq are from Iran.
You just mentioned social media, and if we can just spend a moment on this, because 10, 15 years ago, I mean, these conflicts have been going on for many, many years, especially in the Middle East. Now that we have social media, easily accessible to it, most people are seeing it. How much has social media, has it been playing a role in what's happening right now?
I would say significantly, because there's two things you have to look at. Is it's not just the kinetic warfare of putting weapons on targets or people physically fighting, but there's the psychological and information warfare. And that has, as time goes on, actually plays against Israel. And the reason for it is you saw in the media the graphic imagery of what happened to children in this terrorist attack. It's a terrorist attack into Israel. And then now you're seeing the response, and you're seeing people injured by the hundreds, if not thousands, within Palestine and the Palestinians within Gaza, pardon me. So the idea of seeing more and more people hurt is playing against Israel the longer that this goes. The biggest enemy is Hamas. So if Palestinians can go against Hamas and Israeli goes against Hamas, we have a unified problem that we can fix. But right now, that entire social media image is showing nothing but injuries within Gaza, which is turning people against Israel regardless, because of a short memory of what the attack was against Israel from Hamas.
Glenn, we have to let you go. Just real quick before I do, are we expecting to see more U.S. troops deployed into the region anytime soon?
Well, there's a prepare to deploy order to approximately 2,000 troops across the United States, mainly medical and supply and support. Maybe in the support role right now, but as far as boots on the ground anywhere, I don't anticipate that. But I would say right now that's about the only thing, and they haven't got the deployment order yet, so it's just preparing to deploy.
All right, Major Glenn Ignacio, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Take care. Have a good morning.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.